A few weeks ago, the president of Western Washington University, Dr. Sarat Randhawa, just sent an email explaining, updating a little bit on the situation at Western caused by the COVID-19. And in the email, he was stressing how, in his opinion, all his quantitative training wasn't enough to actually explain or to confront, to make sense of these extreme circumstances created by the pandemic, the global pandemic. So I just humbly decided to add a little bit to the conversation. So I decided to do what I do best, I believe, which is add a little bit of qualitative perspective into this. So I invite you all, my colleagues and friends, to enjoy the next few minutes with a video that I put together, or rather my students put together, explaining, telling, narrating their experience around online teaching, the closure, the confinement, the closure of Western and the confinement, and all the problems, but also opportunities, very interesting perspectives. So I invite you all to look at it, and please feel free to leave messages, comments. You can do that by emailing me, or actually you can join my YouTube channel. Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel, so feel free to do that. I hope that this helps a little bit to maintain a sense of community, and particularly to really listen to our students who have a lot to say, as you're about to see. Thank you.
Being a college student during the COVID-19 pandemic is not easy for me. I have been in fight or flight mode since the beginning, and it's really hard for me to focus on my classes at this time.
My experience so far with online classes for spring quarter has been quite a struggle. I'm not someone who learns in an online environment, and so that's been pretty hard.
Sure, yeah. I'm an exchange student from Japan. I'm living in Panama right now by myself. Yeah, it's boring. I think online class is not for my things because it's really hard to keep motivated.
Personally, I don't thrive in an online setting because when I'm at home and I'm just on my computer in my own time, I have way too many distractions.
The COVID-19 pandemic hasn't been easy, to say the least, but I'm learning how to deal with the changes. It hasn't been easy since I work as a dietary aide at a nursing home, so I myself try not to go outside. Like, I'm always indoors because I have to think about the people I work around who are elderly, who are more likely to catch COVID-19.
So far, COVID-19 has been difficult for me due to not being able to go out and see friends. Same reasoning as everybody else, social distancing can be hard at times.
Being in this pandemic has been a journey, especially as somebody who's immunocompromised and can't afford to get sick or health out.
This has been a pretty challenging quarter as someone who likes to socialize and interact with my classmates and my professors. Not being able to do so in person has just really been a hindrance to my education, and there's not really anything I can do about that right now. And
I am spending the pandemic down at my grandparents in New Mexico with my mom and sisters, so it's been nice to have that support with me, but at the same time it's been really challenging because I have to help with my little sister sometimes, even when I'm supposed to be in lecture, and trying to balance the two is often challenging, as well as dealing with everyone else's schedules in my family.
Hi, I'm a student at Western as well as a Western employee, and I am also graduating this quarter. So during this pandemic, I've kind of dealt with a lot of changes in terms of working from home, transitioning to online classes, but I feel very, very lucky that I have been able to do those things. I've also been able to afford the same apartment that I had when I was working a few more hours.
I'm no longer in Bellingham. I'm actually in Spokane living with my parents, which has been an interesting experience for the both of us. especially since I haven't lived with them in over 3 years.
In reflection, it's really been interesting to see how we have gone from in-person in school and in my job to online. I'm a lead mentor with Compass to Campus, so our main job is usually working with children, and that's not happening anymore, so that's really interesting.
This quarantine stuff really hasn't changed my life all too much. Still go to work, I still go outside.
That during this quarantine time, my life hasn't changed much. In fact, I work more due to it because I work in a pharmacy.
Also, this is a time that not everyone has access to resources to maintain classes online or even maintain being a student right now. And so I think just being extra considerate and being extra patient could go a really long way during this time in a pandemic.
It's been a hard transition to change from in-person learning, which I do best with, to online. A lot of my teachers have different styles with all this, and I find that I work the best with a lot of structure, which is hard to have when I don't have any Zoom meetings to be at.
In times like these, I would like to urge you to actually get in contact with your students, to have some face-to-face communication, because that's really what I find has worked the best. Currently I have a professor who is in France who has had more contact with his students than another one of my professors who is in the States, who seems to be non-existent.
I'm a player on the men's soccer team, so not being able to meet together with the team and train and get better for next season is difficult. Zoom meetings have been good. We have been keeping in contact with our coaches and other teammates to stay connected and do team workouts.
I like a classroom setting where I can sit down and I can really ask questions and dive into the material. I am trying very hard to stay focused and understand everything that I'm working on, but all my classes use Canvas so different, and it makes it really hard to try and stay focused and understand what's going on.
It's really hard to navigate the online learning, and it's really hard to get work done. And I've taken online classes before through a Running Start. Those were formatted specifically to be online classes, just as they were. So they were super easy to navigate, they were super easy to complete the work in. I did really well in them. But with these courses, I'm not really gaining a lot of information, and I'm not doing as well as I'd hoped that I'd be.
I've been having a very hard time staying on task and staying motivated to do school, bouncing between all my different classes. When the expectations for many of the classes has changed and is up in the air, and everything's just kind of all over the place.
After reflecting upon my experience so far on an online class setting, I have to say I miss college in Western so much, and transitioning to an online format has been incredibly difficult for me. I am the type of girl who loves going to class and loves learning new things and really jumping into my schoolwork, and I feel that an online format kind of takes that away from me.
And a lot of our classes up until now have been very discussion based and involved a lot of like group work and debates and activities and things like that. And a lot of those activities are just not deliverable online, which means they've been replaced by busy work just to get through this spring quarter.
The only problem that I'm having is not having a clear list of things that we're doing, which I know is like a total millennial problem of not having rules and guidelines for everything, but I am having a hard time with that. One of the surprises though is that I do well not having a ton of deadlines, and I get it done as I want to or as I feel like doing it.
But there's one thing I really like on online classes, because it's really flexible. Sometimes I set class like midnight, yeah. But anyway, I'm doing my best.
But transitioning to online classes, it was challenging and difficult in the beginning, but I think I'm getting used to it. So, yeah.
I feel like we don't know who's actually taking this seriously. So one of the things I'd like to address is coming back for fall. I'm just kind of curious to see what the administration's plans are for class sizes and how they're going to deal with that so that we can all remain to be safe.
But as we kind of look forward to next year, I feel even luckier that I don't have to make a decision about living situations. Because whether or not Western opens, I'm sure a lot of students are deciding whether they need to rent an apartment for next year, or whether they can afford it, or they need to go home. That's my biggest concern for students continuing at Western.
It's also been hard because I just went from having 3 jobs in school, or last quarter, to not having any, and thankfully I've been able to pay the past couple months rent, but starting after June, I have no idea how I'm gonna pay for it, so I think that's been a really big stressor for me.
My question is about student loans and the debt that accrues on it. I know that my student loans, the information on that says that I'll start accruing debt on my payments as soon as I'm done with classes for more than 6 months. So I know a lot of people that have already graduated, their payments have stopped right now because of the epidemic. But I want to know if the same would be said if I didn't attend classes in the fall because I decided to work instead of doing online classes, if we decide to do it that way.
I'm here. So I'm just gonna be super authentic and say that lately I've been dealing with a lot of uncertainty. I don't know what's gonna happen with my grades, my future, the world. There's all this crazy stuff going on. I just have to constantly remind myself that all we have is now. And I know it sounds super simple, but it's really hard to not overthink, at least for me, to not overthink of things that I cannot control or,
While I have some professors that have been really kind and understanding, I have some professors who are not. They are still expecting us to be working at the same level and same pace as if we were on campus, sometimes giving us more work than usual because we are at home all the time. But nothing's the same. We're not lazy. We're just trying to work through our degree during a global pandemic.
Hard. Thankfully, Western has switched to a pass and no pass grading system this quarter, and I strongly encourage and urge them to maintain that if we do have to take fall quarter online. I also strongly encourage professors to, even if you think you lightened your workload, just lighten a little bit more, help us out, help you out. We want to do great. You want us to do great. Why not just lessen the workload just a little bit more to ensure that everyone can be successful?
Reach out to your students. And be understanding of their situations.
Something that I would like to tell WWU instructors are to just be a little more empathetic and more understanding during this time, and to treat people with kindness.
And this quarter is really important for me personally, just because I'm retaking the class again in order to pass it for my major, and I'm not doing well because it's already hard enough and now it's online and I'm scared.
I don't know what else to say. It's just been hard, but I'm also really thankful that these are normally issues that I don't have to deal with all the time. Normally I have a job and it's easy for me to focus and, well, more or less, and get my work done, and to continue to have that family support. And I know a lot of people don't have that, even outside of the pandemic, so I'm really thankful for that, but it's still definitely been a struggle. So
around Bellingham, but that's pretty much my only concern, is what we're going to do to kind of stop the spread when we get back to school.
It's challenging to go through and do all the busy work when I know my education right now could be so much more valuable if it wasn't online. And for that reason, it's a lot more challenging to stay motivated over the quarter, if that makes sense.
I really miss just having a face-to-face interaction and trying to understand the material, because I've been struggling very hard to understand a lot of my material.
It's just been a little bit of a mess for me, and I've been having a hard time with it. And for anyone else who's been having a hard time with it, I see you. It's hard just because we're at home and we have, so to speak, a lot of free time. It doesn't necessarily make our class is easier, how many of them we're taking or work or anything else. We can just hope for the best and hope this doesn't go into the winter or the fall, which it very well could.
Really interested to see where the rest of this quarter and the quarters ahead of us go.
Happen next, and I just hope that things will slowly go back to normal.
Yeah, just if I could say something to y'all that helps me is that to be mindful and just stay in the present moment, and allow things to unfold the way that needs to be.
Really look forward to. So this whole transition has been very tough for me, but that being said, it has also presented a opportunity for me to reflect upon everything else that I am thankful for in my life, and I feel that there's something to be said about that. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my experiences this far.